This is the Kia EV4, Kia's first all-electric global sedan. But unfortunately, this is also the Kia EV4. So clearly the elephant in the room is the very polarizing looks. But what's nice is that when you're sitting inside it, well, obviously you're not looking at the outside. And hopefully that's enough for you, because I think for the right price, this could actually be a pretty good car. But you know the joke about how if your car is fast, they'll only see your taillights? Well, fortunately this car is slow, so they'll only see the good part. But because we are thorough here at Out of Spec, I am going to not just show you the good part, we're gonna look at everything. But they're only giving me an hour with the car, so we're gonna look at everything within a short, reasonable amount of time.
This video is brought to you by Iona, North America's premier charging network. With unmatched commitment to elevating the customer experience, Iona is opening America's roads to all EVs, giving drivers the coverage they need, the reliability they deserve, and the amenities they crave.
Quick note, Editor Jordan here. I'm going to mention the price multiple times in this video because, yes, they haven't said the price, even though they're aiming to be lower price. However, I think they haven't said the price partially because we're trying to figure out what the tariff situation is going to be. Tax credits looking like they're going away, even though this might have not even been part of that, because as far as I know, these will be manufactured in South Korea, even for the US market. There's also manufacturing done for the EV4 hatchback, I think, over in Slovakia, or maybe that's also where they build the European EV4 sedan. Either way, there's a lot of question marks surrounding price, so I thought I should just mention a big part of that could be about tariffs, which I didn't mention in this piece.
So yes, it's striking, but the price, which we don't know. This is Kia's new entry ground-up level EV, at least in the US for now. Yes, the Niro EV exists, and actually they entered the market with the Kia Soul EV back in like 2014, a while ago. So they've been doing EVs in the US for a while, so I think they do know some things. But the Niro EV is the one that is most attainable right now, and that's built on the K3 platform, built to accommodate hybrid and combustion as well, so not optimized for electric like the eGMP vehicles. So yes, this is built on eGMP, Kia and Hyundai's global modular platform. And eGMP has been praised ever since it came out with the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, now with other electric vehicles. You know, it's ground up for EVs from the beginning, which means there aren't as many compromises as you would find with like a K3 platform that's designed for multiple architectures. I mean, eGMP has been a halo in the industry for a few years, given that it's modular and high voltage. Oh, actually, this one is 400 volts. It's lower voltage. What? Okay, they've officially taken the word modular too far. So I guess eGMP has become a bit diluted, but we'll talk about that more later. First, let's discuss the sculpture. So what is actually happening here? Well, the opposites united is kind of their brand strategy phrasing for their design language, both inside and out. Opposites united is kind of meant to be like humans and nature coexisting in like interesting, unique ways. So it's marketing speak. But this is meant to be a modern and expressive appearance. And I do think it is. And I also think this actually looks a lot better in person than you would have seen in the digital renderings or even on camera so far. This nose is kind of meant to say power to progress, like empowering you to progress into EVs. This is meant to maybe be an EV for not quite early adopters, but like what we call later adopters. People who have held out for the early adopters to have their turn, and now they're kind of trying to get some new internal combustion engine prior customers into this car. In fact, maybe someone who had bought a K4 coming off of lease and might consider this as the replacement. It has a very low, sleek nose, as they say, like a sports car. It's actually very interesting though how it just like droops down. Kind of, not as far as you'd think, but it kind of reminds me of the rear of the Chrysler Crossfire, which that's way worse than this, I promise. But this is definitely very short front overhang, nice low slung lines, and I guess gives you a bit more visibility out the front. In theory, we'll check that in a minute. But I should also say right up front, this is the GT line. This is the maxed out one. Everything you see here is kind of top tier, which I find a little ironic given that this is meant to be a attainable, lower priced car. So there's kind of two things happening here. On one hand, the light and maybe wind versions will be more affordable than many other EVs that have existed thus far, bringing in more people who have been EV cautious and afraid and annoyed at the higher price points. On the other hand, they're still trying to also appeal to gas car customers and don't want to, alienate people who would maybe normally buy a maxed out K4 or something. And those people have a bit more budget to get a nicer car and still want the sedan. This is, again, Kia's only sedan that's electric. And back to design. This is what's called the tiger face that Kia has been known for a while. I kind of came into this hoping it'd be kind of Kia Stinger-ish, which I do think is still one of the best looking cars on the road, unfortunately discontinued, which I thought was kind of due to a lack of sedan excitement, but maybe that was just lack of performance sedan excitement. This is, again, a sedan, although it's kind of interesting with the silhouette and very, very long rear overhang as compared to the, well, hatchback. There's also an EV4 hatchback. We're not getting that in the US, and there are currently no public plans for that. They may consider it, but currently we are only getting the sedan. I'm trying to think of, I guess this is like the weirdest angle to me. But unfortunately, see, typically when I see a shape like this, I think, oh, cool, kind of a slope back sedan situation. So maybe a lift back like we saw with, I think the Stinger had that, of course, Model S, and some other vehicles have that, but no, this is actually truly a sedan. The opening for the trunk is right here. This all stays static. So that's kind of a bummer, but I'm curious to see the trunk. We'll look at that in a minute. Lighting, of course, is a very pronounced thing at Kia. They love the very jagged, angular, in this case, very upright lighting signatures, which I do like. Okay, this is officially the worst angle, but looking around the edges, like this view is not too bad. And curious on blind spots, curious on all that. We'll get into that in a minute. Dual separate sort of roof spoilers, which is cool. And then the kind of angled sloping roof that Kia is very famous for with a lot of their vehicles. I think it actually does look pretty good, especially from this angle. Even with the long rear overhang, it's kind of weird. It's not my choice. I think the hatchback looks a lot better. We're, of course, like I said, not getting that, which is a bummer, but I think it looks pretty decent. This is on 19-inch wheels. You really only have two wheel options, and it kind of depends on trim which options you can even select, but these are the 19s. I think there's maybe another design of 19s, and there's also 17-inch aero wheels. All of Kia's wheels are very jagged, aero, unique, geometric looking shapes. I think they look pretty cool, especially rolling down the road. I think that'll be kind of sweet looking, but I'm really curious to see what these 17-inch aero wheels would actually do for efficiency. I think wheels and tires make a huge difference. More lighting up here, of course, and you have the cube lights that you kind of have seen in the EV9 and actually over on the K4 turbo side for the gas lineup. So very nice lighting. This is also GT line only, I think, so I'm not sure what the lower trims will do with lighting, but again, very curious. The front camera really sticks out there quite a bit. It does hide in with it from most angles being black like the rest, but yeah, it's still very prominent there. You also have active aero shutters here, which should help with efficiency. The whole bottom side of the car, actually 82.5% of the bottom of the car is covered, so that should also help with aerodynamics. And just being a sedan overall, pretty sleek shape. That helps with aerodynamics. What's cool is you will have kind of a unique introductory welcome lighting stuff that happens, like all the little LEDs, the cubes will light up. Even the rear of the car has an interesting lighting signature to welcome you to the car. Again, the GT line maxed out version of this, but kind of cool. We've seen lighting signatures from all other, well, not all manufacturers, but many manufacturers do that. I think that's a really sweet touch, a really cool thing to play with the LED lighting that we are now so used to on most cars. So between the wheels, which I'm worried to see the 17s. I think the 19s look pretty good on this car. 17s I think will look weird and awkwardly small, kind of like what makes me think of the Nissan Sentra, which is not a good car to be reminded of. But 111-inch wheelbase is a bit shorter than most of its competition, but overall the length is long because of the absolute Pixar dump truck of a rear end. And actually, that gives you more storage space than the hatchback, which feels really ironic. Actual dimensions, in case you were curious, 186.2 inches long, so just under 2 inches longer than a Kia EV6, actually maybe 3 centimeters. 73.2 inches wide, which is, I don't know, normal, 58.3 inches tall. So a little bit taller than, say, the K4, but that makes sense because of, well, battery and stuff at the bottom, so they have to raise everything just a bit to still remain good occupant storage space inside. What's interesting is having the shorter wheelbase. Being 111 inches, that is shorter than, yeah, Model 3, Ioniq 6, Ioniq 5, everything else. Ioniq 6 and Ioniq 5 actually have really long wheelbases for their size, which helped increase interior passenger space. So really excited, or curious I should say, to try out the rear seats because I'm curious how the legroom will be impeded, or maybe it'll be fine. But this is nearly a foot longer than the Kia EV4 hatchback, which we aren't getting. Why can't we have nice things? I think the hatchback looks amazing. I'll put that on screen. Maybe that'll come eventually. They said they're going to pay attention to the market. I'm just surprised that the sedan is the only thing they're bringing here because I thought the market was saying Americans don't like sedans, but maybe that's coming around. And they actually said Americans who do want sedans want them to look very different from everything else, which is why the sedan looks very different from everything else. Again, polarizing, but I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, because I will be looking for the people who say this is a great design. Maybe you're right. From like C-pillar forward, it's actually pretty much the exact same as the hatchback. The rear is what changes. But sedan does mean efficiency, and judging on the Model 3, Model S, Ioniq 6, etc., it's awesome to have efficiency. In fact, this is a drag coefficient of 0.23, which people have noted is better than a Porsche 911 GTS. I don't know if that's exactly what you should compare this to, but 0.23 is still very respectable. Not quite as slippery as the new Tesla Model 3, which I think is 0.219, or the Ioniq 6, but still respectable. And if it's efficient enough, you could actually live with level 1 charging just fine. This color here, I guess, is new, and they will have a variety of colors, including kind of matte paint stuff, which is cool. There's going to be a new red color, which I'm excited to see. I hope they bring some cool colors because, well, in the next showroom over there is a Kia K4 hatchback, which, why is the K4 get a hatchback? I don't know. And that's in yellow, which actually, I want to go see that. This is the color I would love. Look at this thing. This is the Kia K4 hatchback, which looks very similar to the EV4 in many ways, including the EV4 hatchback that we don't get, the forbidden fruit. And this color is insane. Like, I thought Rivian Compass Yellow was my favorite. This is pretty close to being tied. I mean, look at this thing. That's a proper hatch. So all I can say is hopefully people actually buy this hatchback and this color to prove to Kia that people want hatchback. Either way, a Kia EV4 hatchback in this color would be ideal. But sadly, I'll take you back to the actual EV4, which is a sedan and gray. So yeah, why does the K4 get a hatchback and this doesn't? Something's not adding up to me. But this gray color, I mean, I guess it is a color for the masses. It seems to be that most people buy black, white, and gray. I'll let it pass. Let's jump inside, see how the interior feels, because that is technically more important than the exterior design. Testing ingress. These door handles pop out, by the way. Not sure if the lower trims will do that. I think they may not, but I'm jumping in here and whoa, okay. Very spacious and very quiet. So it's kind of similar to the EV9 headrest, although not mesh, although I think the lower trims may actually get mesh. I'm not entirely sure, but this is a two-tone interior, which I think looks actually pretty good. That's a GT line thing. If you want the lower trims, you'll have either black or white, which means kind of one of these two colors, with probably a little bit different textures and finishes, and hopefully the mesh headrest. I prefer the mesh headrest of the EV9. If they just put that in everything, that's what I would just tell people to buy. But this actually feels pretty nice, very spacious. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised that it's spacious because the exterior of the car is absolutely massive looking. Getting my seat into position. Let's test drive your position. Yeah, actually feels pretty good. Steering wheel is a little bit squared off, but the cutouts make sure that you can still see the entire display. However, that makes this kind of thick, which means from my exact point of view, I can't really see the climate screen, which is the same issue I have in the EV9. This is basically the same climate screen as the EV9, kind of a 5.5 inch thing here, 12.3 inch there, 12.3 inch there. It makes for a total of about 30 inches of screen if you link them all together. And yes, very familiar stuff if you have driven any Kias, honestly. Materials feel okay. I'd say textured, somewhat premium-esque. This is, of course, is plastic. Love to see these buttons here. And we got manual adjusting vents, volume control, which may not be working. I'm not sure. They didn't specify that everything was working. In fact, I know like the map and stuff isn't necessarily working, but this is Kia's new CCNC, or connected car navigation cockpit. Okay, finally remember the acronym. But again, navigation in the acronym for a car with really mediocre navigation. Our last race to Vegas showed that pretty extensively. Shameless plug. I guess I feel like a broken record, but it's not very responsive. It's really hard to use. They have Google points of interest, which they said is a really big deal, but this car isn't actually featured with it yet. The K4 in the other room is, so maybe I'll check that out too. Jumping temporarily into the gas vehicle, the K4. How could I? On out of spec, a gas car? No, it's just to show you guys some software stuff, because this is like pretty much all the exact same stuff. Although, look, functional physical buttons. That would have been nice. And actually, this volume knob feels a little bit nicer, but otherwise very, very similar. Like if someone had a Kia K4, like I said, and was coming off of lease, maybe wanting to jump into the EV4, it'd be so easy because everything feels pretty much exactly the same. So this one actually has Google POI capability, which I'm curious how good that actually is. So back here, back. Okay, here we are in the actual infotainment. Okay, I guess search near POI. These should bring up Google POI stuff, restaurants. There we go. Google, using Google POI. Now it shows you restaurants near you. Okay, and you can like click on one, and then that should show you, yes, photos, their hours. So it does pull from Google for all this stuff, which is nice. So in case you want to have kind of a laggy interface to look through photos that you could just pull up on your phone, that's an option. Hopefully I can play with the Kia app more, because I need to do like a full in-depth software review on the newest CCNC, because it really is objectively far worse than Rivian or Tesla or Lucid, or potentially even GM, because GM has the full Google suite, which is pretty decent. This one is entirely in-house stuff, which is just not the best. It's usable, but again, I feel like most people would just use CarPlay, Android Auto, call it a day. This also has AI, which we should be able to use. What type of wine would you pair with chicken?
Chicken pairs well with a variety of wines. For roasted or grilled chicken, a Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc works well. If the chicken is prepared with a rich sauce, consider a Pinot Noir or a light-bodied red.
So that's the example they gave when they showed me the car. Like, not something useful, just like what would chicken pair with wine? It's funny. Useful information though, actually. Now I'm hungry. But I know, first of all, the AI is just kind of reading text because it mispronounced Pinot Noir and Sauvignon Blanc. But also, I'm curious to see if it actually will do something useful. I want to go to a charger that is nearby a restaurant rated 4 stars or above. What would you recommend?
I recommend checking out the nearby restaurant called The Whitney, which has a 4-star rating. There's a charging station located at the nearby parking lot. Would you like directions to either the restaurant or the charging station?
How powerful is that charger?
I do not have specific information about the power rating of that charger. You may want to check the charging station's details on a charging network app for accurate information.
What brand is that charger?
I do not have information about the brand of that charger. You can find details about the charger.
Okay, it got my hopes up early on, but then it really fell apart. So, I don't know. The AI will be interesting to play with. I would love to push it to its limit. And although it would be amazing to do a race to Vegas with EVs using only their built-in AI assistants to navigate to chargers and just navigation in general. That'd be hysterical. Let us know if you want to see that. It's just really rough seeing CC&C, which has navigation in the acronym, having such a poor navigation. I mean, routing chargers and stuff. Me and Colton did a whole video on this recently with his EV6, which yes, doesn't have the newest version, but the new version still isn't that great. There are ways to connect like a better route planner with your car through OBD, which we've shown in a recent video over in the Out of Spec Bits channel. Recommend watching that. But overall, yeah, I think a lot of people will just throw on Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, which by the way are both wireless and both standard, and just that's enough. So if you can get a better route planner running and having your route planning done much more effectively and much nicer, the issue is you can't actually use that to precondition to the next charger. Maybe here in the EV menu, you can do battery preconditioning. You can manually activate it, and that possibly could get around that. That's ideal. That'd be sweet. I will say, having this level right here where you can actually touch things here and rest your hand here, I like that implementation more than the actual EV9. You do still have buttons here, which are capacitive and are still not my favorite implementation, but being that you have other places to rest your hand, that does still solve one of my issues and frustrations with the EV9. So I'll take that. I like these toggles. They remind me of Lucid very much. This also reminds me of Lucid. I just hope it's a bit more responsive, although it's technically tunable, so maybe they can figure that out. And yeah, as far as comfort over here, we have heated and ventilated seats and steering wheel. You have to get GT line, so top trim with, I think, technology package to get those, which is a bit of a bummer. I praise the EV6, I think it was, for having ventilated seats and the wind trim, which is the middle trim. The wind trim in this, I don't know if it can have these unless maybe it can get the technology package in the wind trim. I don't know. They haven't been super clear with what packages go in what trims. We'll know more about trims and pricing closer to launch. Pricing especially, because that's, I think, really important to try to sell this low voltage car. I don't think I really love the steering wheel design, this like floating horn thing with the offset logo. Offset logo is actually fine with me, totally fine. But something about this just feels and looks a little funky. Feeling, I guess, is fine. You do have the pedals, or paddles, I should say, for iPedal control. And by the way, this is iPedal 3.0. Yes, iPedal 3.0 means it keeps your iPedal setting even when you turn off the car, turn it back on, it remembers it, and you get one pedal driving in reverse. So thank you, Kia. Finally, they haven't confirmed if that's coming to other cars with over-the-air updates, but I sure hope it does, because we've been complaining about that for a long time. Also, like the EV9, you have a column-mounted shifter thing right here. So that's instead of, you know, the EV6 having the rotary dial thing right here. That leaves this kind of open and spacious, and actually seems pretty functional. Like a lot of really great storage. 2 floors. You got upstairs and downstairs for storage. You have a wireless phone charger right here, which is actually a pretty decent location. Not 2 chargers. I feel like that would have been a no-brainer. Instead, you have 1 wireless charger and then just random open space on either side, which doesn't really help. I think this should have been 2 wireless chargers with active cooling. That would have blown our minds. I don't even know if this wireless charger is actually included by default, but yeah, at least you have those. You have cup holders that kind of appear out of nowhere. You can slide those away, and then you have even more storage space. Really cool, awesome use of storage. And the center console right there, a little divider right here that you can remove if you want. And yes, you guys have probably seen Kia EV4 videos over in Europe where they had a center console that folded out and into a table that goes back here. They decided the US customer probably doesn't want that. I also actually would have to agree with them. I think that was kind of gimmicky. This is cool. I like this. These buttons right here, auto hold, camera, parking sensors, the hill descent control, I'm guessing, which is kind of interesting for an EV with really high levels of regen, I would presume. That's fine. I'm curious if you guys prefer the seating controls, heating stuff on the doors, or if you'd like them in the center console like we see Hyundai doing. I actually haven't decided. Maybe it doesn't matter. You do also have the typical thing where you can select power or power and data for USB ports, and Autogafool, I think, said this is a 100-watt power delivery. I have to confirm that. If that's the case, that's awesome. High-powered USB ports is what we need. And yeah, okay. Here's another problem. We have an manual dimming mirror in a Kia GT line, so high-end trim, highest trim at the moment. Still a manual dimming mirror. That's crazy. Maybe that's not final production. They did say this car is not like totally done. Launches, by the way, early 2026. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. But yeah, we'll see once it gets closer to launch if that's actually final, because that's crazy if that's the case. I hope not. But then again, we have an Ioniq 6 that had a manual dimming mirror, but that was only the base model. The product planning is wild around here. With drive modes, you have selecting Sport, Eco, Normal, My Drive, and Snow. Love to see the little LED lights. Let me see if I can zoom in on that as I do it again. Boom, Eco, Normal, Sport turns everything red. A 64 color ambient lighting, by the way, which is pretty cool. Also might be a higher trim thing, not really sure. Okay, don't want to have a copyright strike, but I think that's pretty good EQ. This does have Harman Kardon as a sound system. That is optional, maybe for other trims. I don't know the exact trims and what trims get what. They haven't announced that yet, but it's the premium sound system offering. Actually sounds pretty good. Better than the Meridian stuff from other Kia stuff. So love to see it, love to hear it. Still not super full oomphy bass, but I'd say pretty good. Good enough for most everyone. And that's pretty much it for the front. Yeah, seems like pretty good visibility, pretty good everything. This is not equipped with a heads-up display, which I thought was going to be a thing, but maybe that's over in Europe, or maybe that's not equipped on this one. I don't know. Optional sunroof, I believe, which is cool. It is a sliding opening moonroof, but because the car is sloped so far back, it's basically a sunroof for only above your head. You can't actually really see out of it. I guess rear passengers will be benefited. I'd still prefer just a glass roof, but Kia and Hyundai seem to be taking that a little bit differently. Speaking of rear passengers, though, let's go find out how that feels. Okay, so egress. Ugh. Wow, really easy. And door thunk. Ooh, nice. Very nice door thunk there. Opening the rear seats. I do want to point out from the get-go, pretty aggressive angle is what it seems there, and that's partially due to the floor height while not having a transmission tunnel, which is nice, so center passenger can benefit. You do still have kind of a higher floor because of the battery. Wow, super spacious. And another side benefit of the rear passengers kind of being rotated backwards means you can have more headroom without actually needing to be upright or adding more roof space. So I'm sitting behind myself. I have room for days. My friend Alex at Motortrend, 6'10", I bet he could fit in here just fine. Maybe. And it is interesting too, because if this had a glass roof, you would typically see more headroom. And so the fact that this has a metal roof, while still having this headroom, I'm pretty impressed. I do find it a little bit cavernous, not having a glass roof and also not having a white headliner. I'd love to see the lighter interior. I think that'd be my choice. I can't wait to spec one of these. Maybe I'll do a whole bits video on that, speccing your EV4 once it does come out, to the configurator anyways, because that'd be pretty sweet. But otherwise, appointments back here, pretty basic. Just decent material choices, but then this feels like pretty cheap kind of injection molded plastic. Windows maybe turned off back here, not really sure. Wait, is that a thing? Window, oh yeah, window lock. Ugh. Okay, windows are unlocked, let's try it. Almost all the way down, not quite. There's a little edge there, but that's passable, I'll take it. And then you have your kind of quarter window there, which is interesting. So visibility, really quite good. And space, like I said, really quite good. I don't know if you're really gonna be that comfortable with your legs being this far up. I don't know if that's my favorite thing, but I guess it's doable. But it really helps having this much space because you actually can't put your feet under the front seats, which is normally a way to help give you more space. It's the exact opposite of the Tello approach, which is like put the front seats on a pedestal and give you maximum footroom around them. Not so here. We do have two air vents, No rear control, so I guess Model 3 wins in that regard. But Ioniq 6 doesn't have that either, so maybe it's not a big deal. The people in the back aren't the ones buying the car, so who cares how they feel, right? I love the texture though. Love the look, love the texture of the seats, the finishings. Everything looks and feels quite good. 2 USB ports, one in each seat. It's also not necessarily my favorite place. I'd rather have ports down here, but you do have vehicle to load. So here's a port right here. There we go. 110 outlet on here. And also you can plug in an adapter to the charge port, and that'll give you a 110 outlet in the back or outside the car if it is equipped with the V2L option. Pulling this open here, seems nice, seems fine. And I'm guessing, yeah, we'll see how this opens up and see how the pass-through is. Huge parcel shelf, a grate right here, which I'm guessing is where speakers are hidden. So yeah, seems pretty nice. I still wish this had just been a lift back sedan. I think that would have been super cool, but oh well, it's fine. So everything feels pretty good back here. Not going to complain too much. Let's check out the storage space because I think that's very important and kind of impressive with this car. Exterior egress, not quite as easy as the front, but still pretty decent. I'm guessing this is equipped with a powered, nope. Okay, manual trunk, which surprises me, given that it's in theory a higher end trim. But huge, pretty expansive storage space, 490 liters, 17.3 cubic feet. I think that's the exact same as the Model 3, which is pretty impressive. Not sure if there's any sort of underfloor, yeah, a little bit of underfloor storage stuff, which is nice. And yeah, I'd say it's really quite usable as far as storage, but you will have these things impeding on like whatever's right here, so you can't necessarily pack this out completely because then you won't be able to shut that. See how those like kind of go into the storage cavity a little bit? That's not my favorite implementation, but nice wide accessible area. And I guess we'll fold these down because I'm curious to see how that works. I guess you release those, come up here, pull this down, plenty of space. Being that the passengers in the rear have so much legroom, you don't have to do the awkward like move the front seats forward in order to fold the rear seats down. Really love to see that. So, oh, I just locked it. Wait, are you serious? You can't actually unlatch these from up here. You have to go all the way back to the trunk, pull this, then go all the way back up here, pull this. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so the seats don't actually go flat. So here's what you're looking at from the rear with the seats folded down. A huge lip right there that is a few inches. So you can't really put something flat back there, but still a decent amount of storage space for something going all the way through. Of course, a 60-40 split there. No center pass-through for the center armrest thing, if that matters. If you're into skiing, that could be a big thing. But yeah, so you do have a little bit of a thing there, depending on what you're putting in here. If it's long, might fit. But again, I still would have preferred probably the more normal lift back, almost hatchback type thing. I'd probably just prefer the EV4 hatchback, to be honest. But what's really interesting is this has 2 cubic feet more storage space than the EV4 hatchback, which feels backwards. Usually the hatchback has more storage space, but this having such a long overhang, whereas the hatchback ends like right behind the rear tire, that's what helps it have more storage space. But I think the hatchback might have more usable functional storage space because the rear seats can fold down, then you have that huge open, more expansive area. Just depends what you're hauling. Folding these back up, nice solid thunk. I will say, even though I technically would prefer a lift back sedan with, you know, not this huge parcel shelf right here in a more expansive space, this configuration probably improves NVH, which they say is going to be exceptional, really good for people who are coming into this category, maybe buying their first EV. They're going to be really wowed by the NVH, which of course we'll test once we can get this on the road. Closing the trunk. Okay, so same storage capacity as a Model 3, but I am nervous to look because I think I know the answer. I don't think there's a frunk. So Model 3 and many others have frunks. Even the Kia Hyundai stuff have frunks, although not very big. This does not. There is no storage space up here whatsoever, even though there's quite a decent sized cavity. In fact, the same looking cavity size as you'd find in some of the others. Nothing there. Dang, that's a bummer. So maybe that would have like added cost, not really sure. But again, the focus is price, which we still don't know. Interior space, fantastic. Hugely acceptable rear space, great comfortable seats all around. I like the materials, I like the fit and finish, I like the vibes. Ambient lighting, they could have done a bit more, I guess, but I guess we're nitpicking at that point. And I even think it looks better in person than I thought it would. And it looks better than how it renders and photographs and everything, which is good. What's normally back here by the trunk is a charge port on the other Kia vehicles and Hyundai vehicles, but that is up here now, which actually is pretty cool. And check that out. Manual charge port, which I do prefer, and NACS at launch, which is awesome. And being an ACS, you have immediate easy access to Tesla superchargers that are open to external cars, and being a very short overhang means this should reach V3 cables. I've been told that, but that still looks like you have to really pull up extremely close and hope the cable reaches, and it depends on where exactly Tesla placed the pedestal because they don't always place them in the same spot. I'll be curious to try this, but this should work with, you know, Tesla superchargers just fine. So NACS at launch, hell yeah. But this is when we should probably get into the specs, which are a mixed bag, just like the looks. They just gave me the specifications, so 400 volt architecture. Yes, that is the big disappointment for me. I thought that tech would be far well good and used and proven by now. And I think that's what a lot of people associate eGMP with, but that's not actually true. And this is not actually the one to break that cycle. EV3 and EV5 in other markets, smaller CUV looking things, those are also 400 volt architecture, which is a bummer. So it's not EV4's fault, but I'm still disappointed. I really should do a bits episode or something on what actually makes 400 volt architecture cheaper. How much cheaper is it? Is it really saving that much cost, or is it nickel and diming too much? I don't know. There's a lot I want to get into with 400 versus 800 volt architecture. Battery sizes, 58.3 kilowatt hours or 81.4 kilowatt hours. Not sure if gross or usable, they didn't specify. But what they're aiming for with the ranges, which by the way are not EPA certified, they're just AER, which is all electric range in Kia's terms. What they're hoping the ranges to be are 235 miles for the small battery light, and then 330 miles for the big battery wind, or 300 miles for this GT line because of bigger wheels and tires and maybe some slight aero changes. Again, not EPA range numbers. Hopefully we can actually test those out ourselves once we get a hold of this, but I think it should be somewhat efficient because, well, again, the drag coefficient is good. Single low power motor is good. Active aero in the front, good. Weight, I don't know, could be not good. We'll see. But here's where we get into the rough specs. Peak charging rate. I asked them what the peak charging rate was, and their response was, oh, that actually doesn't matter. Which is good, because yes, peak charging rate doesn't matter. It's all about the curve. But still, peak charging rate is 127 kilowatts. Sorry, what was that? 2015 called and they want their charging specs back. I know, but again, the price. So yes, peak charging rate is 127 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts if you have the smaller battery. That's really pretty rough. But DC fast charging time is 10 to 80% in roughly 30 minutes. 29 minutes for the small battery, 31 minutes for the large battery. That's fine, but like, man, after having all the headlines of EV6 and Ioniq 5 being 18 minutes, 10 to 80, etc., that's pretty crazy. But I will say, I wanted to point out a test that I did with Corbin, our friend, the Ioniq guy, one of our resident Kia Hyundai enthusiast experts. We did a test at a Tesla supercharger with a Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is 800 volt, but can't do 800 volts on Tesla superchargers, and then my Model 3, which is brand new Model 3 on its native hardware. He beat me to 80%, 10 to 80 in 30 minutes. So anyone who makes fun of this charging time isn't allowed to if they think Tesla's charging time is also totally acceptable, which I know my colleague Colton does not. But again, the price. But I guess I do have to make the argument that for a car like this, people theoretically may have home charging, and that's where it's actually decent. It has a 48 amp onboard charger, so 11.2 kilowatts max, and I think that will give the car 10 to 100 in 5 to 7 hours, depending on battery, which is really quite good, very usable. And like I said earlier, I think you could technically live with level 1 charging if you drive efficiently enough, if this car is efficient enough, which is awesome. I've done it with my Model 3, totally fine. Even something less efficient than my Model 3 would have been totally fine. But then the counter argument to that is someone who may not be able to afford a expensive EV, may also not be able to afford housing with dedicated garage space and charging space, which makes you think that should have really good public charging capability, which this isn't really class leading in at all. Then we have the power specs. So this is basically the motor, maybe the exact motor from the Kia EV9 Lite, which is 201 horsepower or 150 kilowatts, and that is also 209 pound-feet of torque. So not that much power, usable power, but definitely down on power. 0 to 60 is roughly 7.5 seconds, rough guess, maybe depending on battery, because I'm guessing the batteries also have slightly different voltages, which may adjust power things, because the smaller battery Kia EV9 is actually a little bit more peak power, 215 horsepower. But this one, all we know is 201 horsepower. But here's the issue, front wheel drive. That, I think, is a worse choice for EVs. We've kind of known that, and I would have expected it to be rear-wheel drive, just like the other Kia products that offer two-wheel drive variants. But this one is just front-wheel drive no matter what. No matter what the trim, even GT line maxed out, still front-wheel drive, still slow. Top speed, by the way, 105 miles an hour. Slow. But when you're actually driving that fast, like, seriously, they may bring all-wheel drive variants into the future. They could do anything in the future. That's kind of what they've said. But at launch and for the foreseeable future, no all-wheel drive, no rear-wheel drive, and no hatchback. So here's my final thoughts, which I'm giving next to the car that I actually like the looks and color of. I hope it does well. I hope people actually want the Kia EV4, because I do want more and more people to get into electrification. And I think we've already gotten to that place where most of the early adopters have gotten their cars. Now we're looking at major adopters. So we're looking at people who may be transitioning from gas cars, or maybe going from their Kia K4 into an EV4, or maybe they have a Telluride and they want an electric sedan. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think of its shortcomings. The charging speed is clearly very poor for today's standards. I mean, 127 kilowatt peak, that's what we saw 10 years ago. Yes, the curve matters more, and it will still charge much faster than cars 10 years ago, but that's still really poor peak charging. I thought we were moving towards high voltage. I thought the high voltage architecture being out for years now would mean that the cost would come down enough to make generic cars accept it more. I was hoping that'd be like this pillar that Kia built their electrification strategy on, and although they built their pillar on eGMP, it still is not what I originally thought it was. But again, not the EV4's fault. The EV3 and EV5 came first with low voltage architecture. But there's two sides to everything, and like I said earlier, it's still going to charge faster to 80 than probably my Model 3, which is pretty terrible. Tesla, how is that acceptable? But also having no frunk and I'd say technically kind of subpar software experience, a bit disappointing, but I'm excited to drive it. I still think there's a huge market for it. I think a lot of people are familiar enough with Kia and Hyundai products in general, especially Kia products, that would find the EV4 a very easy car to get into, literally speaking, very comfortable. And I'm just curious how you guys think the charging and capability is as far as the class of car. We don't know pricing yet. We don't know full spec breakdowns. We'll get that when the car comes closer to production in early 2026. Is it too ugly to sell well, or will it sell fine because it's very interesting and unique looking? I think a lot of people thought EV6 was ugly, but then it sold actually pretty well. I see them all the time. It's absolutely a market. It's just, do enough people in this market, especially if it can get that low price point of like mid $30,000 for the entry price, is that cheap enough? And do those same people buying this car have home charging access to where the fast charging speed and everything doesn't even matter? Time will tell. And when that time comes, we'll tell you the whole story. That was funnier in my head.